Welcome back to the Good Eye Podcast. My name's Jay Smack. Here we talk about, we try to put positive conversations out into the ether, if you will, and also talk about interesting stuff and people that are doing good stuff. Tom Leahy falls under both of those headings. Tom heads up Beacon Tree, and it's a nonprofit out of the Richmond area that you need to hear about. He started it himself, and they're doing great work, important work about mental health and young people. So please do listen up. Hopefully you'll find something valuable in it. He also talks about the fundraising event that's coming up shortly, which hopefully you will find worthy of your support. So let's get to it. This is my conversation with Tom Leahy of Beacon Tree here on today's Good Eye Podcast. And here we go. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for coming by the Good Eye Podcast today.
Jay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. As many of the people that I talk to on this podcast have in common, we met through Synapse, a networking group. Obviously, but just for listeners, a networking group that meets at nonprofits, which is really the linchpin of it all. It's a cool organization that small business people and community-minded people coalesce at and help those nonprofits. Of course, your organization, Beacon Tree, is one of those, and you guys do some really cool work. And I did not realize, and I know we've met once or twice at meetings, but I did not know that you started the organization.
True. Yeah, and we've been in Synapse. We were one of the first nonprofits when Keith started Synapse some years ago. So I'm very proud to be part of that organization. I think it's terrific. Love Keith to death. Anyway, yeah, so Beacon Tree Foundation, like so many small nonprofits, came out of a personal experience. We had, 4 children, 3 daughters, 1 son. All 3 daughters, in one way or another, suffered with some level of mental illness. And, some more significant than others. But, you think, well, you have 1 child with mental illness, that's a challenge. You have 3, you're being trained for something, And, Diane and I decided that, having experienced the struggles of trying to navigate the mental health community, the struggles of dealing with, children that you can't communicate with and deal with in the same way as others, and just the sheer financial impact that this of taking care of children with mental illness has on a family, because private insurance falls woefully short when it comes to health care for mental illness. Even Medicaid has its limitations and challenges. So Diane and I said, we need to do something through our experience and what we've learned to help other families. And so we said, how do we do that? And we said, well, why don't we address the challenges that we see that families have, the parents have, in getting the help that their child who's suffering with mental illness has, and getting the care they need. So the first hurdle is the stigma that still exists around mental illness. It's been so hardwired into our cultural psyche that mental illness is not a medical condition, but a character flaw. It is really hard to get past that. I mean, yeah, we do a better job of talking about it in the media, whatever, but for that individual family, it is still a very scary proposition to raise your hand and say, my child is mentally ill, I need help, because, you still run the possibility of being, talked about in the neighborhood or labeled, ostracized, that child somehow dealt with differently at school, whatever it might be. So we do a lot of awareness events. We do, educational events, partner with other nonprofits that are in the mental health community to try to further, that piece of it, educating the public, educating mentors, educating public officials, parents, that's where it starts. The second hurdle we saw was access to services. So, parents are brave enough to raise their hand. Where do they go to find what their child needs in terms of therapy or medicine? What's out there? What are the resources? How do you find them? And because, locally, and even nationally, really, people who operate in the mental health community don't market. They don't advertise. I mean, you may see a large national addiction company or something on TV, but for your local therapist who is in business, they don't put ads in the paper or anything. So access to us was the second hurdle. And so in conjunction with and in partnership with Virginia Treatment Center for Children, we created a steering committee. We brought in other professionals from the mental health community here in Richmond. This is back in 2008, just right after we started Beacon Tree Foundation. We came up with this concept of what is now the Cameron K. Gallagher Resource Center. It was the Children's Mental Health Resource Center, but the Cameron K. Gallagher Foundation was so supportive financially in helping this service be built that we felt we needed to rename it. But the point is, it's a gateway. It's a call center for families to enter the mental health community. One call, navigator answers the phone, puts their arm around that family, figuratively gets them in touch with the right provider based upon their circumstances, follows them through that process to make sure it goes smoothly according to plan, all of that. We have a database that's been built there at the resource center, so we know, who's doing what, who's good, who isn't, that sort of thing. So, it greatly reduces the amount of time between identification of an issue and getting that child in front of the right professional for help. And you're not spending 50 hours on the internet or on the phone trying to, figure out what's going on. So very, very effective, very efficient. We take about 200 calls a month down there, people looking for help. So that kind of gives you an idea of the level of need. So that's the second hurdle. The third hurdle is, okay, so now we found the right service and therapy and a plan is being put in place to help our child. How do we pay for it? What is insurance doing for us? Do we, is there even any mental health coverage in your policy? And what is the limitations? So, we've found that even trying to do a psychological evaluation on a child, which is really the foundation for the plan of therapy and medicine. You have to know what's going on. You have to evaluate that child. even in something as simple as that, oftentimes insurance doesn't pay for it. Medicaid may not cover what needs to be done in terms of what the professionals say need to happen. So the third hurdle is what we address in our charitable program, which is our family assistance program, where we will step in and we will gap fund, or we will pay the provider what is the fallout after insurance or whatever other means are available to pay for those services. We can step in and pay the difference to make sure that child gets the help they need. So those are our three pillars, and that's what we do. Obviously, the impact of the family assistance program is huge on families that can't afford to give their child the help they need, because it is oftentimes beyond their capability financially, and when insurance doesn't kick in. So and we're just now finalizing a relationship with Valley Star Credit Union, where we're going to be able to offer a very low interest personal loan to families. Beacon Tree Foundation will back that loan. It'll be provided by Valley Star, but we will back it so that if family needs something beyond what we can give them based upon our resources and our requests at that time, that they can, take advantage of this, this loan program that we would back, So, maybe they don't have $2,000 that they can spend on an evaluation. Maybe we can't, based on our resources and who's asking for money at that time, maybe we can only give them $1,000 toward that. Well, they could take a loan out for $1,000, right? And maybe they can pay that $10, $15 a month payment and still make it happen. So it gives us more flexibility, extends what we are able to do for families financially. So I think that's going to be a wonderful addition to our support structure for families. So so that's kind of gives you an idea of what we do and why we do it. I mean, we're mental health in this country, mental illness is it's at the core of all things violent. I mean, if you look at things that go on, and it's so often because we're not proactive, we're reactive. Because we talk about physical health, we talk about mental health, but they're both medical conditions, right? I mean, and early intervention is so critical. The earlier we can identify an issue with a child, the better the chances are that we can short circuit that cycle of mental illness. And so, that's why it's so important for us to be able to provide that psychological evaluation. We just, about 3 years ago, we bought a program for a provider here in town to diagnose children as early as 2. So those terrible 2s may be something else, but it's the idea is not to wait till the problem is too big to deal with. As parents, we need to, identify an issue. Is there a potential issue? Is there something going on? It's very easy to find out, right? And we don't want to wait until we can't fix the problem, and that's oftentimes what happens because we'll rationalize it away. I know I was there with my kids. Oh, they'll grow out of it. It's just another temper tantrum, whatever, until the next one and then the next one. And then we've got an issue where we end up having to send our child off to a residential treatment facility in Utah because they've tried to commit, or take their life by suicide, however many times, in and out of Tuckers and that sort of thing. So if we could deal with that earlier on and keep that from happening, so much the better, because they end up, 80% of the kids that suffer don't get treated. 75 to 80%, the experts tell us. What are those kids? They're on the street. They're in juvenile detention. They grow into adults that, end up in prison. As they said, like 55% of male and 73% of female inmates have some sort of mental or emotional issue that contributed to them being in jail. They make fun of the fact that the LA County Jail is the biggest psychiatric institute in the country. But if we had helped those people earlier on, how many of those people would be productive citizens today because they had a treatment program, they had medicine and what they needed to overcome their issues and lead a productive life. I mean, I think this figure is like $38 billion we spend in this country keeping people in prison. Wouldn't it be great if we use some of that money up front to keep them from being in prison? Mm-hmm. I mean, it says we need to be more proactive instead of putting sirens on campus to let everybody know when there's somebody running around with a gun. Why don't we do what we need to do to keep that person from getting in a position mentally where they think their only way out is to pick up a gun?
So,
right?
All excellent points. You laid a whole bunch out there that we can unpack a little bit, but all those are great points. And where you ended up is where I'd like to start addressing some stuff. And that is how do parents, I guess my question is, early detection you mentioned is so important, which it absolutely is. Before we even get to the point where we need a siren on a campus, what are some warning signs or even some resources for parents to know where to start looking? My one question was going to be where do parents start? Well, that's the hotline you mentioned.
Well, there, but not in terms of identification.
Yeah.
Being able to recognize signs of maybe something happening. There is great material that's available through NAMI. Mm-hmm. If you go to their website, they even give classes.
National Alliance of Mental Illness, correct?
Yes. So, that that's where it starts, is as a parent to educate, ourselves as to what it looks like, and how we can be more intuitive in terms of watching our child and what's going on with them. And it manifests itself in all sorts of ways.
Mm-hmm.
All three of my girls, it was a different, a different situation. They all suffered in a different way, manifested in a different way. So it's understanding your child and recognizing changes and, in mood, in activity, that sort of thing. And there is information at NAMI you can get the free information. They'll explain it, give you the list of things to be looking for and all that. And I believe we even have that kind of information you've got our resources page on Beacon Tree. There's a link there that will provide that information as well.
In Western medicine, we tend to treat the symptoms as opposed to the root. And really, the symptoms can be. It's such a symbol. It's such a stark example. Your warning siren that you mentioned, that to me is a good symbol. But because mental illness doesn't really have visible symptoms to treat, we tend to, like you say, kind of look the other way, hope for the best, figure it's a phase. And that really gives rise to the stigma as well, which is undeserved and unfair. I feel like, and I'd like your perspective on this, that we're getting a little bit better about it, as opposed to, before it was the kind of thing where it was unspoken and you didn't mention it, and maybe you'd medicate or something like that. But I think, ironically, the rise of social media, which has really helped to increase youth anxiety and things of that nature, that we're a little bit more aware about the prevalence of mental illness, especially when it comes to young people. What do you think about that?
I think, for social media, to me, is a two-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Because one, it gives us a platform to be more quickly and effectively educate and let people know about things. Like you said, we're more aware of it, but it also gives a platform for evil, mm-hmm. in terms of bullying, mm-hmm. and things like that directly cause, harm, or turns out badly for the person who's being bullied and that sort of thing. So, I think people are a lot more aware of it. Whether they accept it or not, and understand it, I think is still a question. It's sort of like, I hate to, but it's sort of the same situation we deal with in this country with racism. Mm-hmm. We can all nod our heads and say we shouldn't discriminate, we shouldn't, and all this, but how deep rooted is that in us as a people, as a culture, as whoever, you find yourself in your mind thinking things that you sometimes embarrass yourself, mm-hmm. but it's the way we were raised, especially me, my age. It's hard to get past that. It's hard to get past the, mental illness. It's something we're afraid of, or it's something we make fun of, right? The best movies are about what? The best scary movies. Yeah. People who are nuts, right? Or we make fun of it. Thinking of the cartoons with the, Daffy Duck or whatever it is, or some of the movies with Jerry Lewis, that it's, so it's a really sticky wicket when we talk about how to deal with it from a cultural standpoint. And we talk about, the treatment and how to deal with it. I think, talking about the symptom. Yeah, it's like fighting a ghost. You can't see it under a microscope. You can't put a Band-Aid on it or put a cast on it. You can't give somebody a shot for it. There is medicine. There is therapy. We know that together those are very helpful, but it's a constant struggle, and you're constantly having to change medication, especially a young person, because their bodies are changing, their minds are changing, hormones and all that. So it's, it's not a one done deal. It's a constant fight until they get to a certain age. And in some cases, like my one daughter, she's going to be on antidepressants the rest of her life. She understands that because she's come off of them and ended up in the hospital. And so she finally got to a place where she understands just like having diabetes or something else, that she's got to take her medication.
Mm-hmm.
But the other point I want to make, when we talk about the treatment of mental illness in children, well, even in adults as well, I guess. But we tend to be very clinical. We talk about therapy, we talk about medicine, but we forget about the spiritual piece. The spiritual healing has to take place, because so often these kids are damaged. They're harmed in some way. Their spirit has been, bruised, and we have to heal the spirit as well as dealing with the root cause through therapy and maybe the chemical stuff that's going on through medicine. We forget about the spiritual piece, and it's so important.
No, you're absolutely right. And a lot of that, it's not, we keep going back to the same theme. It's not quote unquote cool or acceptable to say you need help,
Right.
And again, back to your double-edged sword comment, you see that more on social media these days. I'm not doing well, and then people jump in and say, hey, I'm here if you need me. But
Right.
again, along the lines of social media, and you mentioned the bullying, kids, everybody, but kids are seeing what their friends are doing and what they're not included in real time. Hey, we're all
Right.
over at this girl's house or this person's house, and they're like, I wasn't invited. And
Right.
before, I mean, when I say before, 20 years ago or so, something would happen. You'd find out about it the next week and you kind of move on. But now kids are being reminded of what they are and are not included in and what people
It's
think. But, it's
right. Well,
tragic.
expectations as well, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is what you should look at. Like, this is what you should be wearing. This is
Right.
what you should be,
Right.
you should be successful. We're putting pressure on our kids at a younger and younger age to be successful, not just in academics, not just in athletics or social, but even sexually. They're being inundated with this information that tells them what they should be doing or what they should be looking like and whatever. And we're asking them to grow up too quickly, and it's being exasperated by, I think, social media and TV and everything else. Until we give our kids their childhood back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And let them be kids. It's okay to be average.
Right.
Okay. It's okay to be average, and we're going to continue to see a rise in cases of anxiety and depression. I mean, you think about colleges, and now even more, but when we're all on campus and everything else, there was a huge increase in these rooms, places that were being created so kids could come there and chill out, because there was such an increase in anxiety and everything in the student population. The aroma candles and whatever. Maybe there's a cat to pet. I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a cultural academic pandemic. Well, yeah, it is a pandemic worldwide,
Mm-hmm.
basically, but it's not talked about in the same way. And now the COVID-19 has really caused it to have a whole new face, because kids are now at home. They're now not being seen by teachers or counselors who might recognize an issue. And so it was just, talking to someone the other day, and I didn't realize, just the last few months, there was like 4 young people here, middle school kids here in Chesterfield County that, died by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that the isolation or whatever, as I think we pointed out earlier, that it's just it is all coming together to really create, a perfect storm. Where either it's going to be, the virus is going to get us, or what else is going to get us, but it's, we've got to be, proactive. We've got to do the right things and not sit by, and be in denial as a parent. It's okay if your child has an issue; it can be dealt with.
And some of that goes back to your point of spirituality. These poor kids are, isolated and alone, and yet seeing everything going on in social media. You need something else to fall back on, whether that is self-acceptance or meditation or a faith or, whatever works for you when it comes to spirituality. And spirituality and mental health are so closely related. The term inner work is very popular now because you work
And I
on
want to make sure
yourself.
people, when we say spirituality, we're not talking religion.
Yeah.
We're
No.
talking about connection to something larger than
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, our Native American brothers and
Mm-hmm.
sisters, most spiritual people, but it was about nature. It was about the earth and being stewards of that. And that's the whole idea, is that we've got to connect them back to something that they can, get a hold of and get from outside themselves and their issues. And that's why green space and, camping trips and rock climbing and all this stuff is so important when we're dealing with children who have issues, to put them in a room and give them medicine and talk to them without doing anything else is just kind of treading water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the outdoors and space, which is for me definitely a spiritual activity. I'm a big outdoors person. But talk a little bit about the Trees of Hope Garden and the memorial bricks and that stuff.
Oh well, yeah. Our annual signature event is called Trees of Hope. This year it'll be our 9th event. We missed last year because we were overcome by the virus. Obviously, was an in-person event. Actually, it was an outdoor event starting out because 9 years ago we had a conversation with the city of Richmond, and we got approval to install a garden, a grove of trees, meditative space at Bird Park behind the Roundhouse, and it's there. We maintain it. It's for public use during the year. There's benches, there's, whatever. It's a great place to go. That was the idea, is a place to go to remember, to reflect, pray, whatever you want to call it, meditate. But we would come there at end of April, beginning of May, each year, and have an event where we would bring in young people to share music. We have people share their stories. And then at nightfall, we would do a light show on the trees to the final musical selection. A very beautiful ceremony and event. Weather being what it is, and the number of people that we ended up having, come to it, we had to change our venue. So we moved it to Lewis Ginter the last 3 years in their auditorium. No weather problems, enough space for all the people who wanted to come. And Colesville Nursery up in Ashland would truck in for us planted trees and shrubs and things to create a garden space on stage. So we still have that feel of being, in the garden. So it's all, Trees of Hope. It's all about hope. And that's what really, when we come at the end of the day, when we talk about Beacon Tree, what we're trying to do, we're trying to deliver hope to families, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And there's ways of dealing, and not to give up, one foot in front of the other. Having been through it, that's all you can do. You continue to love, you can continue to do what you need to do. Parents, you got to stay together. You can't let it break you up. I mean, it can destroy families and just have awful results if you don't deal with it in the right way. So there's people that can help, be happy to, call me, I've been through it. I'll be happy to listen. I'll be happy to talk to you about your situation. It's part of what we do. So anyway, May 6th, we're going to do a virtual event this year because we don't want to bet on things opening up. So we've got a lot of young people and speakers and things that are going to be part of that event. I'm really excited about everybody who stepped up at this point. So we're looking for sponsors right now of that event, and I think we are providing a very, very nice package for our sponsors in terms of, letting people know who's supporting us. We have a great social media following. We have a huge email database of previous and current donors that get all of our information. We produce and distribute Healing Connector, which is a publication that has educational information, but also has a directory of approved providers in the area that is distributed around the community. All these things will be available for us to thank those companies and corporations and organizations that step up and want to support our event.
And sponsors, if they are, or anybody interested in finding out more, just go to the website at beacontree.org.
It's very easy to find the event there, Trees of Hope. I think we even have a pop-up, or there's an events tab that you can go to and find it there. But it gives you an outline of the sponsorship opportunities, and then as soon as we have more of the pieces of the puzzle together in terms of the program, we'll be promoting that and trying to get people fired up and excited about coming and participating in that event. And we have, Greg McQuaid, Channel 6 is going to be our MC again. He's been our MC for many years, great supporter. So we're really excited about having Channel 6 on our side now as well in this process. So
that's great. That's great. I'm just curious, where'd the name come from, Beacon Tree?
Beacon Tree. Well, I was trying, I guess you think about the symbol. So, beacon is a light that helps guide one out of darkness. And tree is a symbol of growth.
That's awesome.
So I think it sort of symbolizes what we're about, helping families nurture their children, and would provide that light to guide them by.
As we start to draw to a close, let's identify specifically some of the causes that people might put under possible mental illness. And you mentioned a couple of them on the website: depression, anxiety, bipolar. What are some others that just pop to mind?
Personality.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole list of mental illness, manifestations of mental illness, and it's just it's a matrix basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of symptoms. It's a matrix of how the person reacts and acts out and all of that. But if there's an emotional or mental issue, we would be able to help that family address it. We will oftentimes, but depression oftentimes wraps itself around other medical issues. A child has a disability, and because they can't do what their friends do, as we were saying, that creates anxiety and turns to depression or whatever. So there's we're treating not just the physical disability, but we've got a mental issue as well that we need to deal with. So nothing is real simple, and the requests that we get from providers to help families that they're dealing with, they're very oftentimes very complex. We had a request not too long ago, 10-year-old boy, and you think about 10 years old, and they're requesting that we do a psychosexual evaluation, because some of his manifestations were of a very inappropriate sexual nature. So there's something going on, with that as well. And nobody pays for that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody pays for that kind of specialized evaluation. But we can do that, so that, and so hopefully, as a result of us stepping in and helping pay for that evaluation, that young man will get the help he needs, and perhaps has a greater chance of leading a more normal, happy, and productive life.
Wow, your point in your example about depression wrapping itself around another illness or situation, that's really
really
stark.
A good example. We often get requests for support because there's the child's on the autistic spectrum, but in that situation, it creates the possibility and oftentimes depression, anxiety, and this sort of thing. So it's never simple.
No, you're right about that. And we mentioned it earlier, but addiction is such a big issue as well, and obviously it is, but it strikes me that addiction and mental illness are very similar in that people don't always take action to address the cause or support the cause until it affects them or someone in their family directly. But right. What they may not realize is that if both those things in combination with other syndromes,
mental illness
affects just about everybody.
it's the chicken or the egg kind of thing, you know, because sometimes the depression drives a person to abuse alcohol and drugs to deal with the depression. But sometimes it's that addiction that creates the depression. So you don't, you know, again, it's, you know, oftentimes convoluted.
Well, Tom Leahy, I appreciate you being here. I would stress that people should reach out to you at info@beacontree.org, online at beacontree.org. The event is Thursday, May 6th, 6:30 on Facebook Live. And any other questions, just hit up those contact digits there and get in touch. And let's shine a light. Shine a light on it. Thanks so much.
Literally. Look forward to talking with anyone who has an interest to find out more.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. And thanks for the work.
Have a great day.
The work you're doing. All right. Thanks. Thanks to Tom and everyone at Beacon Tree and the work that he's doing. If you'd like to support them, you can find the web address and all that good stuff on the website at goodeyepodcast.com. And please do share the podcast episodes. That's kind of why it's here, so you can share it around and get the word out about some of these great organizations and inspirational stories. You can find out more information again at goodeyepodcast.com. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, also on Spotify. And thanks very much for your time, attention, and intention today. Until next time, support your local do-gooder and try to look at life with your good eye.